All right. Thank you, guys. Thank you, guys. Yes, I'm going to do my talk on the care and feeding of a robot. I work at Userscape with Ian and Taylor, and we've been working on a robot for, the better part of a year now. And so I wanted to kind of go over, kind of a high level how we've got to where we are. This kind of goes away. It's not really Laravel specific, but it's kind of building a large scale application with, in today's day and age. So, get this going. I am always happy. Somebody told me that at lunch, and it's true, I am. But my name is Eric Barnes. You can follow me on Twitter at Eric L. Barnes. Like I said, I work at Userscape. I am a product engineer, and I get to work with Taylor and Ian. So yes, I am awesome by association. But really, they are. I just kind of, I'm there to pick up the slack. Whatever they don't feel like doing is what I do. So it's a lot of fun. Let me introduce you to Snappy. Snappy is the robot. We are a sponsor here. Like I said, we're kind of basing this presentation off of what we've done, what we are doing, what we're going to do in the future, and kind of where we are today on on building a large scale application. As of right now, we're still in beta. We're still kind of uncovering all the little issues that's going to come up along the way. But it's been a very, very fun experience. So to get started, conception. In our case, conception is the forming of an idea. This is how it all got started. And this is actually a really funny story. Ian come in one Monday, and we're all remote workers, and he put in chat, he's like, guys, I bought a whiteboard. I don't know what I'm going to do with it yet, but I bought a whiteboard. So we're like, all right, yeah, cool. Way to go, Ian. And so then Friday, we did these one-on-one, like FaceTime through Skype or GoToMeetings, and he's like, guys, I got this really big announcement I need to tell you. And we've already been spending months building this other internal application. So he's like, he broke off the news to me and Taylor, and both of our heads exploded, and then we calmed down a little bit, and we're like, oh, that's an awesome idea, let's do it. And so that's how it all got started. It all got started with basically just a whiteboard drawing, and then from there, everything kind of went away. So what this section is, I want to talk about, how we got it started, some of the tools we used here, and just, kind of an overview here. So the first step, sorry, is brainstorming. We all work remote, as I mentioned, so brainstorming was rather tricky. We did, at the time, we used a chat application, so everything was kind of done through chat. Everything was done through like GoToMeeting, and but of course that that has some negatives. You can't discuss anything directly in person. Your communication is a whole lot harder when you have to write it down or when you have to do it through telephone or through video. And of course, getting on the same page can be problematic. But it has positives. Everything can be written down. That gives you that written record that you can go back to. And of course, nothing is ever lost. You've got a written history. So from here, we moved to the GitHub Wiki. We did everything on the GitHub Wiki, which was nice. We wrote down all the functionality we wanted to have, all the features, pretty much all the ideas, how we want to price the app, how we want to do, everything internal was put on the GitHub Wiki. And then, of course, that gives us the secondary benefit of it's backed by Git. You can check it out, you can see a full history, and you can always go back in time and see how things have seen how things have progressed. So from here, once we've started our brainstorming and written everything down, we wanted to start rapid prototyping. In this section, we didn't actually have designers in the beginning. We kind of it all flowed out of our heads, and none of us are really that great at design. So we kind of just had to wing it, I guess is a good term here. But for the rapid prototyping, what we wanted to do is just get everything into some sort of design, just so we could see, get a feel for how things might look, on screen. So with this, we used an app called Balsamiq. Has anybody here used that? Wow, that is way more than I expected. That's great. For those that don't know, it's an Adobe Air application. It's used for quick mockups for wireframing. It's basically you just drag simple text fields over, boxes over. Here's an example. This is one of our early mocks. Sorry. Kind of broke it. Can y'all hear me? There we go. All right. So as you can see, you know, it's pretty basic. Nothing fancy here. But this did, you know, have the side effect of getting everybody on the same page, because it's really easy to point out, hey, you know, the categories should go under the date in this design. So we went through this section. We created about 4 or 5 different big areas of the app, and then that kind of, you know, finished off kind of all of our planning stages, all of our brainstorming phases. And from here we moved into what I want to call early childhood. You know, this is the toddler stage of a robot's life. This is where we teach him to potty train. You know, that's important. And he starts to explore his surroundings. And more importantly, this is, you know, the kind of the phase where we actually start building something. So first, I want to talk about app structure. You know, how you structure your app is very important, even from the beginning. You know, there's so many different ways, and of course, Laravel already gives you a really great structure for everything. So I just wanted to touch on some of the different things we've done that might help you when you're building an application. Assets. Snappy is a single-page application. You know, we have a ton of JavaScript, so so how we structured the assets was going to be, you know, kind of important from the beginning too. With this, we kind of modeled the Rails asset pipeline. You know, we've got the app folder. Inside here, we've got our assets. And then we broke everything down. Our coffee, which inside coffee would be broken down into the different, you know, the different main areas or different main components. Less for all our style sheets. Test would be our Jasmine, Mockup sign-in, whatever you want to use there. Vendor, in our case, is like our jQuery, our plugins, you know, anything specifically that's downloaded for the app. And then views would be our echo, you know, Jade underscore, whatever you want to use there. In our case, we're actually using underscore, but this is just an example. All right, CoffeeScript. Who here loves CoffeeScript? All right, who hates it? All right. Good. That's half and half. I'll just go on the record. CoffeeScript is awesome. You should use it. I won't tell you why. I'm just going to tell you should go and test it out and see if you like it or not. All the JavaScript we write all we write is in CoffeeScript. I find it so much easier to go back and look at and use. And you don't have to worry about all those commas and semicolons and all that other mess. Who likes that? Did somebody raise their hand? All right. So for our assets, next up we used the GitHub style guide. It's got a pretty good base. You know, how you style your assets in your JavaScript is, you know, it's not really that important. But you do need, you know, you should go with something. So so we stick with the GitHub style guide. One of the big areas that I like most about the style guide was this. Try to prefix all your JavaScript-based selectors with the JS dash. And, you know, as your application grows bigger and bigger and bigger, this makes it easier to distinguish what goes with what area. You know, and the idea here is you should be able to tell a presentational class, you know, from a functional class. And let me show you a quick demonstration. As you can see here, we've got a simple span with 2 classes, the JS-content and the box. You know, immediately, you know, JS content, hey, that's going to be accessed from our JavaScript. You know, we don't really know what it's doing, but we just know something here is going to access it, so we shouldn't modify that if we're modifying styles at this moment. And then, of course, styles, or your JavaScript would never interact with your box class. Your CSS would never interact with your JS classes. All right, makes sense. Just kind of keeps a nice little separation of concerns. And it's just another class, you know, what can that hurt, right? Laravel. And here I want to talk about a little bit of how we set up Laravel different than probably a lot of other people. Well, not everybody, but a lot of people would set it up. We didn't do a whole lot of changes. Right here is kind of our structure. We've got an app folder again, then we've got a Snappy namespace. Inside here, we've got account and ticket.php. Those will be our models. From here, we've got events, listeners, pipeline, repositories. Events, those are, you know, for sending out events, like for our pusher calls. Listeners, that would be our queue handlers, just like what Zach talked about earlier. That's where all our queue handling takes place. Pipeline, that's for our sending mail. And then repository, that's our data access. So what I'm trying to say here is don't get trapped in the world of models only. You know, use all these service type classes, you know, that break your application apart. And, you know, Taylor actually did a really good video on kind of the Laravel 4 release, you know, talking about this, talking about how to do all this. So, you know, spend that extra few minutes and go watch that video if you haven't already. It'll save you a lot of time in the long run. All right, from here, talk about views for just a minute. We utilize, blade layouts, which, you know, they're a joy to work with. They're really very simple. Once you get your head around the yield part, there's really nothing to them. So here on the left, we have our, you know, our basic little layout.blade file, and then on the right, and as you can see, you know, on the right, we just call our layout section title, put in our title, section content, put in our content. It's very simple, but the benefit here, it gives your views a whole lot of power, and I find that very simple, you know, long term to work with and to use. All right, so from here, rapid prototyping again. At this stage, we took our design mockups and we wanted to convert them into something usable and workable. You know, we had those balsamic mockups, and that kind of does give you a really good feel on how things should work, but you know, it's missing that interaction. So from here, what we wanted to do was actually create the HTML structure to use our browsers to actually click around to get a real feel for how things were going to work. And again, we still didn't have our designers at this point, so what I decided was to go with Twitter Bootstrap. I guess everybody here has used Twitter Bootstrap, right? Yes. All right. I used it on the Laravel main site. That was one of my first tasks when I started at wherever I work. But yeah, so that was one of my first tasks, was kind of creating the new Laravel site. And I used Twitter Bootstrap for that. And I was like, yeah, it's perfect. You know, you can convert anything into Twitter Bootstrap. It'll be no problem. And it's really quick to use, quick and easy. So here is kind of one of our initial designs. As you can see, it's pretty bad. We have to have like 15 arrows just for us to figure out what it's supposed to be doing. So, you know, it worked, but it wasn't super awesome. At this point, we hired these guys. These are the 4 Horsemen of Georgia, better known or doing business as Focus Lab. They're sponsors here. Raise your hand. But there's one of them. There's 2 more over there. They're hiding out in the corner. They don't like anybody. All right. Investing in design for your product is the most important thing you can do. This is by a guy named Ryan. I can't say his last name, so. But the fact is everyone judges you by their first appearance. So, you know, design is important, no matter if it's an open source product or if it's something commercial. You know, design is, you know, one of the first things that they're going to notice, and it's very important. So, you know, spend the extra money on design. It's worth it in the long run. And that's something, you know, Ian really believes in, and I do too. It's something that's very difficult to overcome if you have a terrible design. So spend that extra. And then here is what they came up with. As you can see, they kind of knocked it out of the ballpark. You know, they took basically our ideas and our Bootstrap design and then made it into this beautiful little layout here. And at first I was like, oh, this is so awesome, you know. But then I started looking at it and I was like, oh, this is going to stink so bad because this does not line up with Bootstrap at all. It's like, it's full width, it's, you know, a set width column, set width. This is scrolls back and forth. It does all this crazy stuff. And I was like, oh my gosh. And this was me. You know, I screamed and cried for a few minutes. And then I realized there's this guy named Charlie, and he likes to make babies cry. It's horrible, Charlie. But, you know, in that quote, it's true. Life begins where your comfort zone ends. My comfort zone has, you know, I've been out of it this whole project. You know, starting out, I was mainly kind of a PHP guy. You know, I did CodeIgniter, so pretty much everything here has been brand new for me, you know, moving forward. So it's been a very, very good learning experience. But luckily, you know, for the design part, it wasn't horrible. It was just a lot of CSS and HTML tweaks here and there. So, but it did take, you know, 3 or 4 weeks to get it all converted over. And from here, we started our beta. We worked with Focus Lab to create our design. And what they did was they put everything on Dribble. And then that got us, you know, just a huge amount of interest. So we had people signing up for our newsletter, and then of course we were tweeting about it. We were, you know, doing all this marketing, you know, word of mouth stuff. So we had, you know, thousands and thousands of people on our newsletter, or interested more than anything. So that was really great. That gives you a whole lot of, you know, resources to put out. That way they can beta test, and, you know, it kind of keeps everybody from getting bored with it. So what we did, we took, you know, we have 1,000 people. We started out emailing people. So we'd take 50 from the beginning, 50 from the end. And what that did was, you know, because it took so long to get to the beta point, the people in the end, we figured were already, you know, done. They didn't really care about us anymore. So we took 50 of them and then 50 of the new ones because we knew they would be interested. So that way it kind of would even it out for us. But by doing this, we got to limit the access, which was really great. You know, that keeps 10,000 people in it at one time. And then, of course, that keeps our sanity. I don't know if you guys release a lot of open source code, but if you've ever had that one bug report and then you have 1,000 plus ones, waking up to that kind of stinks in the morning because you have 1,000 GitHub emails telling you, good job. So that really helped us keep our sanity. You know, keeps the numbers down, keeps it good. All right, from here, move into adolescency. And as you can see, Mr. Myers has a mustache. And now he has a beard. All right. At this point, Snappy is working. You know, it's doing what it's supposed to do. And now it's kind of, you know, I want to talk about some of the other things we did after it started working. And the first one is automation. You know, automate all the things. Now, of course, some benefits here. You know, automation saves time, and it keeps people from making mistakes. If you have to do one thing more than once, or if you have to deploy, for example, and it takes more than one step, chances are you're going to mess it up or somebody else is. So, you know, go ahead and automate it. And it's really easy. Depending on what you're doing, automation is pretty easy. All right, so first we'll talk about assets. We have a lot of assets. You know, we had the less, coffee, JavaScript, test, you know, et cetera, et cetera. So we needed a way to automate those. And of course, there's a lot of different options here. Since this was all in my realm, I started out using Live Reload. I'm sure most of y'all have heard of it. Then I switched over to CodeKit. And I'm sure a lot of people have heard of it too. But we ended up having really too many assets for those two apps. So we moved over to a thing called Grunt. And Grunt, if you're not familiar, it's a task-based command line build tool for JavaScript objects or projects. They just released a new version I think it was this week, 0.4. But Grunt handles everything. You know, it compiles and minifies our less to CSS. It compiles our coffee to JavaScript. It concatenates and minifies all our JavaScript, and it handles the live reloading of the browser. And then it'll also run your Jasmine, Mocha, whatever, your unit testing. And it will do it all automatically. Once you save a file, everything just happens. You type in Grunt watch, and it's good to go. And it's actually, you know, Grunt's used by some of the big projects. So it's got a lot of backing behind it, so it's really good to use. Next, automate environments. you know, having a dev box with all your dependencies on it is great for getting up to speed. You know, once you have your virtual machine set up, you know, like if you have Vagrant or something like that, you can just do Vagrant up, and everything's installed, everything's good to go. We are a small team. There's only 3 of us really, so for us right now, we're kind of just you know, doing everything with a Mac. So so it's good, but everybody has those days where like Brew just screws up. Or you get a new machine, and then you like have to go through and search all these dependencies and install everything again, and it's just such a headache. So, you know, spend that extra time getting you a Vagrant box going or getting you a virtual machine going. And like I said, we failed at this. We have not done it yet. 10 lashes for us. It can't be all cakes and pies, you know. So anyway, I'm going to have to go back and watch Jonathan's talk. So I get to learn more about Vagrant. All right, automating deployments. You know, I kind of touched on this. You know, chances are whenever you're making a deployment, you're going to have more than one step. Even if you're deploying with Git, you know, you're probably going to need to clear a cache. You're going to need to move some folders or files. You're going to need to do something. So, you know, automate it from the beginning. Just spend that extra, you know, whatever, half a day getting your automation set up, and then go from there. Some different options. You have Beanstalk app. That's a commercial. Another one's called Deploy HQ. It's another you know, commercial app for deploying. Some other things you could use: Capistrano, Python, or PHP Fing. I don't know if anybody ever still uses that, but it's there. I think that's kind of PHP 4 days. People use Fing. What we chose was Python with Fabric. And Fabric is a Python library. It's a command line tool for working with SSH. Anybody here use that? All right, a few Python guys. All right. All right. Another useful library, if you're using, you know, AWS services, is a thing called Boto, B-O-T-O. It's another library, and it integrates, you know, directly into Python, so it's super simple and super easy. All right. Let me show you a example fab file, and that's just a Python file. It's nothing special, but this is literally our deploy script. You know, it's not a whole lot to it. It's really simple. It's great. And then here, I just want to go through it real fast. You know, we've got this is our standard Python code. I'm not really 100% sure what that does, but it works. We import some stuff and from somewhere else, and it's great. Next. Now, I know what this does. This sets up our environments. We have 2. We have a production and development, and then we just put in whatever we would use to SSH in. Nothing fancy again. And then finally, our production or prod function. All we're doing is we're using the roles production, which you know, that comes from above. We're running a git pull. We're running a PHP artisan deploy notify, and what that is just a custom artisan task. Because Snappy is a single page application, you know, we're counting on users to be connected a lot without refreshing. So what this does is push out a pusher call, and what it does is it notifies them. It's got a little pop-up window, and it says, hey, we have deployed something. Please refresh your browser to get the latest version. Next up, we notify production, which that's actually HipChat. We all use HipChat. So we've got a little bots channel. This says Eric Barnes deployed to production. And then print random choice messages. You know, all that does is print messages as an array, and it says, you rock. That's what it says. It's great. All right. And this is just a quick example, because it's just so awesome. I mean, why don't I want to show it off, right? Terminal, type in fab prod. It does the magic. It notifies. Ta-da! And I do this every time I deploy. And I work remote, so they don't even know about it. Sometimes I do a little curtsy and I spin around. It's great. Life is good, you know. And if you did want to take that a step further, you could use HughBot. Like I mentioned, we only have 3, so we don't mind sharing our the SSH key around. But if you had designers or somebody like that who you really don't want access to your production machine, you could hide everything behind a VM, run HughBot on it, be good to go. Wow. Engine hosting. I wanted to bring them up because it's kind of amazing because we built this whole application, and believe it or not, we are not using any Amazon services at all. And I know you guys think that Amazon runs the whole internet, but we have one app that has nothing to do with Amazon. It's kind of amazing, though, really, if you think about it, because they have so many different tools and so much stuff. But at the end of the day, we are not server administrators. My previous job, that's kind of what they wanted me to do. And it was good, I could install a little LAMP stack, get it up and going. But as soon as something went wrong, with Amazon, who do you call? What do? You go to Stack Overflow? Do you go to the Server Overflow or whatever it's called? They don't really have anybody there to help you. So that's why we went with professionals. So when we get stuck, when something blows up, we know who to call, and we got somebody that will help us out. It's as simple as that. And if you sign up, well, he's not here, but Greg Aker gives you his cell phone number. I mean, how great is that? You can call him 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. I'm kind of running really short. I've only did this like 50 times, and I was all perfect timing until you get up here and start talking. So anyway, now that we're in beta, I just want to kind of review. Next time you're building your app, maybe you can use some of the things we've done to kind of help yourself, as you go forward. Use your written documentation. Don't use all models. Use these service type classes in Laravel. I think Sean actually has a post on Laravel.io about using things like that. So just keep improving. Same way, all of your code, refine, refactor, always be improving, always, be looking to do things better than what you did them last. And of course, automate everything, and pick great partners. Even though Charlie has been mean to us, he's still a good partner. He still made some awesome design work. All right. Okay, so we have about 30 extra minutes, so I need a lot of questions, okay?
Failing migrations. I don't know if we've ever had one, but how do we handle that if we have one?
Yeah, our migrations don't fail, right? What kind of question is that? No, I don't know. I mean, we've never had one fail, so I don't know. It's not something we've really...
Usually we do really small migrations, so I guess we just haven't run into one yet, but we probably need to think about that.
Yeah.
Good point.
We write this down. Yeah, and two. Now, do you do a staging environment? Okay, because we do everything in dev first, and that way to make sure everything's going to run before it goes to production. But like you said, there is always that chance. So yeah,
I'm not sure about that artisan issue. Maybe you'll have to.
Migrations and prod are kind of scary to me.
Yeah.
Never update prod. That's the answer.
Yes. Good answer. Yes, sir.
So you guys said that you're using CoffeeScript
We are not using source maps. I would love to use source maps. The way we do it is with Grunt. We create two files. We create just an app.js and then an app.min.js, and we're using app.js in development, local and in our development server, and then in production we're using the .min version of it. And we're actually, in source maps, we're actually using another app called Bugsnag. So it catches all of our exceptions with our PHP and stuff. But they've just released it where you can do JavaScript exceptions with it too. So, source maps is something I really want to look into more of this year.
What's the source map?
It's where, like, your minified file would map to an unminified file, and it would give you correct line numbers and all the other mess. Correct? Yes. Thought I was explaining that right. But, so yeah, I do want to get into more of that, but right now, no. It's not source mapped at all. But I was talking to Tom Greaser. Where's he at? He must not be here today. Anyway, he was telling me that with the new Grunt that they are actually looking more into doing the source maps, and they're actually going to have a plugin for that. So it should be getting easier. Yeah, well, we don't support IE.
Yes, we do. Sort of.
We try to prevent IE, right? All right. Yeah. Either way.
A fan of semicolons, nice.
Next. No, just kidding.
Less versus SAS.
It was actually, we spent many weeks thinking about it, and ended up Bootstrap defaults with less, so we use less.
Did you end up staying with Bootstrap, or you said that the design didn't actually work well with Bootstrap. Did you just shoehorn it in, or did you Bootstrap?
Oh,
You built it.
no! I thought you was going to repeat the question.
Oh, yeah. All right, did we ditch Bootstrap or did we make it work?
We made it work. We actually ditched Bootstrap in that center section and just used all the other components of Bootstrap, and just kind of hard-coded that ourselves.
Do you recommend that?
Yeah, because it gives us all the other niceties of Bootstrap, the buttons and all the other stuff that comes along with it. So it really hadn't been too bad. Nothing super crazy.
Info on CoffeeScript with source maps.
I do not know.
We don't think it's very good.
Okay. Yeah. So nobody knows.
But with building a single page app, what was one of your, of course, besides the Bootstrap, what was one of your bigger challenges?
Learning JavaScript. Oh, go ahead. sorry.
Bigger challenges with a single page app.
Learning JavaScript. No, actually, I started out with pretty much a PHP background, and I was not very good in JavaScript. So that was a really big challenge for me, was learning all of that side of everything. But from there's just a whole lot of little things that we have to, kind of accommodate for and to work with. Pusher was one, that way everybody gets updated in real time across all the connected clients. But there's a whole lot of little nuances there that we've had to kind of go through.
Are you guys using a JavaScript framework to manage your application logic?
JavaScript frameworks we use.
Yes, we are using Backbone. There's too many B's. We're using Backbone, and we're using a plugin called Marionette. I really like those. It kind of reduces a lot of the boilerplate code in Backbone, so it works really well. Yes. Yes.
Zombie views.
We hate these zombies. Yes, that's why I went to Marionette, because I had this zombie view, and it was like, it drove me nuts for like 3 days, and I couldn't figure it out, and so that's kind of when I rewrote everything using that. And for those that don't know, zombie views and backbone is where a view basically doesn't clear out correctly. And what happens is, say, you have a view that, has a form or something like that in it. You close that view and you open another one. Well, if it didn't close out properly and you hit submit on the next open view, then it actually submits twice because you have a zombie view back behind it somewhere. So that marionette kind of helps get rid of that zombie view for you. It kind of unbinds everything. And I would like to point out that the new backbone has better stuff to get rid of zombie views. I don't know, they changed some of the stuff around. I don't really know exactly, but it is supposed to be better for that. Yes?
Do we use requirejs? Why do we choose CoffeeScript?
Good questions. We are actually using, we are not using requirejs at this time. I'm using the marionette plugin we're using. It has modules that you can use, and we're using that. And we're compiling it all into one anyway, so we're not getting the benefit of, loading up 15 different scripts, I guess, like requirejs would do. But to be honest with you, I really haven't learned enough about requirejs to get my head around the benefits to it over something else. Say that again, I'm sorry. We actually have just one big JavaScript file. Yeah.
Well, it's compiled into that.
Yeah, it compiles into the one big one, yeah. And it and then, like I said, and then that's what those marionette modules do is, they control your what's called, when it's called, and all that stuff. Oh, yep.
Do you guys have any nested relationships running? And if so, did you have any issues getting backwards models to play well?
We do not. We do use a thing called backbone query. We started out with that because the original design, we have like all these different pinned columns. So I use backbone query to kind of break out the main tickets collection into these different pinned items. But that's really as far as we went with that. So. Yeah, it's like a website, like socket.io or something along those lines. So anybody that connects, they have an open connection at that point. And it actually gives us a whole lot of features too. Like, we can push out stuff in real time, but then also when you're viewing a ticket and somebody else comes along and views that same ticket, then we can tell who's viewing it, when they're viewing it, and all that, and kind of have some little notification there to keep everybody in sync. Yes.
So are you using like Eloquent for your database persistence and like all the Laravel 4 features? That's kind of what Snappy's built on.
I missed it.
So you're asking if we're using Eloquent and if that's what Laravel.
Like all the Laravel 4 features, is Snappy just built on the kind of stuff that any of us would use when we pull down Laravel?
Yeah, well,
It actually runs on Laravel 3.
Yeah, Laravel 3, yeah.
It's just a stock Laravel. It's not like a hacked, special, super souped up version of Laravel. And we use Eloquent. And occasionally, I think one or two places I did have to drop down to the query builder for something like a little more complex. And but yeah, it's just straight down the line. Laravel 3, Eloquent, Blade, all the stock stuff, really.
Did everybody hear that?
Maybe a stupid question because we got an amazing team to build this, but did you run into any performance issue or like bottlenecks in the app?
Email. Email was our big bottleneck, I think, and then that's kind of where the Laravel 4 queues came from, was because we had that issue. I can't think of anything else.
Yeah, I actually backported the queues to like Laravel 3 for us after I wrote it, and that sped up our app quite a bit in terms of like UI responsiveness. But that was our biggest obvious bottleneck.
Wait.
So you guys use the backbone
do we use basically the default backbone router setup?
We do use their defaults pretty much. You know, we set our own URLs, but it's nothing, you know, tickets dash whatever the number or whatever. It's kind of, so backbone defaults is what we're using there. And what was the second question?
I guess the way that the default backbone routes are set up, does that influence Laravel 4's like routing, like resourceful routing? It's a bit different than what some people do with L3.
Yeah, I actually didn't think about Snappy when I wrote the resourceful routes specifically, but because we are on L3, we have to define quite a bit more custom routes, you know, that we otherwise could have used route resource in Laravel 4. So I have a feeling like we'll be able to delete some of our route declarations and take advantage of that. But yeah, that wasn't specifically inspired by Backbone or Snappy or anything.
I think there were some JSON changes you made, right? Kind of inspired or.
Yeah, returning eloquent to JSON, that's, you know, off the routes is more convenient. But really the resource route thing was more of just like a Rails ripoff.
Yeah. Yeah, Snappy has this, we have like this many routes. It's crazy.
What you learn JavaScript on?
Snappy? No. You know, I don't know. What is that site? There's, yeah, Google. Yeah, no, there's a training site. I cannot think of the name of it. Code School. Yeah, they have, the Code School had the anatomy of backbone, I think.
NetTuts.
Yeah, well, NetTuts too. I was getting to them. I'm getting to you. I'm getting to you. I'm getting to you.
Jeff came to Eric's house and.
Yeah, see, so since Jeff was a sponsor, he came to my house and I made him a liver mush sandwich and he told me about JavaScript.
All right, one more question. Last question. Who's got one?
Okay.
Is the backport of queues to L3 available, or is that just for us?
$1,000. You can have it.
All you would need is require the eliminate queue component, which is separate, like in a composer file. And then I'll just have to post up one task that you would put in your task folder, and you would run just like the queue listen. But yeah, I can post that up like in a gist somewhere. But just use eliminate queue should work okay.
If you do that, we can implement that.
We'll see if we can get that up in a gist or somewhere. Taylor can hack it out of Snappy and post it up.
But to back up to that one, and that one, yes, I did. I started at Code School, and that's how I kind of got started. But the actual NetTuts had one on. No, I'm being dead serious. You had a full backbone class on everything, and it actually covered marionette, and it covered all this other stuff. So that is actually where I learned most of my stuff from.
All right. You're going to have to catch Eric separate later.